Today didn't work. We're back down, heading into the last 20 minutes here by about 2% after yesterday's bloodbath. It's not a great look for Nvidia. Joining us to talk some tech and a few of the headlines from the last 24 hours and week, Mr. Cory Johnson, Chief Market Strategist at the Futurum Group. Cory, great to see you.
My pleasure.
Glad to have you here. Let's talk Nvidia and the antitrust stuff, because it's hit yesterday after the big sell-off, and people were kind of connecting the two. I don't know, it didn't seem like it was worth a 10% drop. Tell me how you're fitting it into what's happening in the stock.
So we can talk about the stock, we can talk about the business, and we can talk about the regulatory world around it. Let's start with the regulatory world, right?
Yeah.
So you've got this notion that Nvidia, and a Futurum Group, we believe Nvidia's probably got 90% of market share when it comes to the top AI chips with Grace Hopper and what's come before, let alone what's about to happen with Blackwell. So these guys clearly have beyond a dominant share of the marketplace there, and that shows no sign of letting up. We haven't seen any of that in the conference calls when we talk to all the companies that are using Nvidia. We're going to hear from one of them after the close today in HPE. The companies that are buying Nvidia chips want Nvidia chips. Are they willing to work with AMD? Yeah. Are they willing to work with others? Maybe not. But Nvidia's got this market wrapped up right now. And so the FTC and the Justice Department taking a look at Nvidia and Microsoft with their dominance in AI right now, particularly with Microsoft's history of bad behavior as it relates to antitrust is a big deal. It matters a lot. And you can argue about whether or not we want monopolies or not in this country, but it's clearly anti-competitive behavior is what's wrong, not monopolies.
Right.
So Nvidia's gotten itself to this great spot right now. What do they do with it? And is their behavior good or bad and anti-competitive? That's the thing that the regulators are going to be looking out for.
That's where it kind of seems like they're almost, heavy lies the crown. They're too good. It's like, can we not look at Intel's market cap and say it's just a fair, this is the jungle, man. And they won. They ate up Intel.
Well, so as we don't want monopolies in our country, we want competition.
Fair.
We want the best products to fight it out with a better product, and we want things to constantly get better. And it's hard to think of that. When there was only one phone company, it was hard to imagine that phone companies could be better. But that's where we were with a monopoly when it was AT&T back in the good old days, when it was Ma Bell, right? We don't want one operating system on our phones. We don't want two operating systems on our phones. I would argue. I think that we'd like to have more competition there to see what could be better. But there's this interesting mathematic issue as it relates to Metcalfe's law and networking when it comes to modern technology, that power concentrates around power, and that networks have strength because they are, and grow because they are a network. That there is only one Facebook out there, that Twitter doesn't come close, that Snapchat doesn't come close, because people want to be around other people, and it builds, there's literal math around how networks work, but it creates new problems for regulators to make sure that companies aren't doing bad stuff with the power that they're generating.
So is the argument that Nvidia, that's an interesting way to think about it. I mean, like I don't know if it's like a neural network, the AI, but would you describe what's happening with the build out of these data centers and stuff? Is it building essentially like a network application to AI in Nvidia? Is that how it's gotten so big? It's like feeding off itself?
So NVIDIA's moving in the direction of doing a lot more than making chips, right? We already know that they're doing a lot of the connections between the chips. They're doing a lot of the actual machines and the build out. They're even running their own data centers now. So the question is, where does this go from here? The market for selling chips is open to the best chip seller. And you can see that where you have the hyperscalers that are buying so much of NVIDIA chips, and yet you see companies like Google and Meta trying to design their own chips for all kinds of reasons, because they want to have competitive choice and because they don't want to be stuck with NVIDIA. If you look at the gross margins and the operating margins that NVIDIA is able to charge right now, we've never seen anything like this at this scale in semiconductors ever. And surely their customers would like to get the same thing for less money, but they don't have a choice right now. And so these issues are issues for the customers, they're issues for NVIDIA itself, there's issues for the regulators, and ultimately it's going to be issues for users as well, because products are going to cost more because NVIDIA is able to charge whatever it wants right now.
Cory, you drew the comparisons to Microsoft's battles with the government in the early 2000s. What do you conclude from that analog? Is it important for the company and us as customers, but maybe the stock will rise through it over time, or what are your thoughts?
I do think that it wasn't that long ago, but it was a generation ago that Microsoft's anti-competitive behavior really stifled what was happening in Silicon Valley and killed Netscape, which was one of the most innovative companies in the history of technology. And I think that the battle scars of that are felt by some of the older companies and technologists and venture capitalists here in Silicon Valley. I say, I'm here in the San Francisco Ferry Building, but the valley has come up to us here in San Francisco. And I think that, I think what Google has done, a company that's been accused of being a monopoly, both in this country and in Europe, Google was formed out of the ashes of that battle. Indeed, Google's headquarters is where Netscape once was, where Silicon Graphics once was. So these battles are top of mind to, I think, the biggest companies as they get big right now. But Nvidia has gone from a bit player to a dominant company in business and in technology, and yes, in the stock market, in very rapid fashion. So we can only hope, and we can maybe even assume that Jensen is a thoughtful person and not going to do bad things with the power that the company has garnered.
We're going to find out
of late. But these things don't happen by accident, and the regulators don't go after you when you do bad things by accident. They do it when you have a pattern of pernicious behavior, trying to kill innovation, to kill your competitors, and to create opportunities where you wouldn't have them if you didn't have power in one market and try to spread it to the next.
I like that. Sounds like we might find maybe not like tons of skeletons in the closet, but maybe a few bones or two, possibly. Cory, great stuff. Appreciate the analysis.